welcome, welcome. In fact, hi, everybody, and welcome. Mark, do you want to just tell us a bit about who you are, who you work for, what you do?
Hi, Andy, and hi, everyone. Great to be here with you today. And yeah, lots of hats, really, that I guess I wear. My work is primarily in supporting people who are getting alongside children and young people with additional needs and disabilities. And I mainly do that through Urban Saints, the children's and youth organisation. I'm their additional needs ministry director. But I wear other hats too. So I'm co-founder of something called the Additional Needs Alliance, which gathers together children's, youth, families, workers, parents, practitioners, a whole bunch of folk to journey together around this stuff. I also founded something called the Dad's Fire Circle, which pulls together dads of children and young people with additional needs and gives dads a space to meet and share with each other. And amongst many different writing bits and pieces I do, I blog as the Additional Needs blog father. So there's a bunch of hats anyway that I'm wearing these days.
I haven't blogged for a little while. I used to blog as Scruffy Vicar, but the blog father, I did think of that, but that's a great name.
Brilliant. Scruffy Vicar sounds great too. I must have a look.
Well, I'm quite scruffy. It kind of works. Brilliant. So first of all, Urban Saints. Some people might know Urban Saints used to be Crusaders, didn't it, in the past? So some people might have heard of that before. It changed its name a few.
Yeah, I mean we've been around since officially since 1906, so quite a long time now. Most of that time under the banner of Crusaders. In fact, when I joined Crusaders in 2006, I applied for a role in Crusaders. By the time I arrived, it had become Urban Saints. So it was our anniversary, our centenary year, that we switched name to Urban Saints, and we've been Urban Saints for the last 15 years, and yeah, it's been growing and doing well.
Yeah, and Urban Saints or Crusaders, it used to be, is mainly about churches reaching out to young people, isn't it? It's about churches working together to enable young people to hear about Jesus. Is that what?
Yeah. So originally, it was born out of trying to reach children and young people that didn't have a church connection. So sort of fallen out of the church system. For many years, that's what Crusaders was all about. But more and more now, because so much youth and children's and families work is happening in church, more now than it was when we started, our aim these days is to connect children and young people with groups in their churches, or in some cases independently, but to reach them with the gospel and to resource children's, youth, families workers to enable that.
That's really cool, actually. Yeah, one of the things I've been interested in, one of the reasons why I wanted to invite you on, is one of the things I've found is that I used to be a youth worker for quite a few years now. Is that often you do find you'll get a kid come along who maybe has Down syndrome or Asperger's or autism, or you have some sort of additional needs, and suddenly you think, how am I going to enable this young person to thrive and flourish? And suddenly you realise there's a whole load of extra stuff you need to start thinking about. And for me, the first time it happened, I was like, I really don't know what to do, really. And in those days, Google was just about there. But yeah, I think probably a lot of people suddenly are like, I just realised that this is an area we just haven't talked about enough, really.
And that is such a typical scenario, really. And when you think that actually 1 in 5 children and young people in the UK have an additional need or disability of some kind. So that's about 2.5 million or so across the UK as a whole. It's big numbers. And but so often we don't see them in church, and all kinds of reasons for that. Families feeling nervous about bringing their child along, all kinds of stuff. But when those children and young people do rock up at our churches and the things that we're doing, usually that's a time when youth, children's, families workers are going, oh my goodness, now what do I do? And start to look for help and look for support. And that's one of the things that we do is, we get alongside youth, families, children's workers. We offer training, we'll do consultancy, we'll resource and equip. But more than anything, what we're what we're about is saying it's okay, you can do this, we're with you. There's a bunch of people that have done this already, and here's some things that you could do that could make a real difference and help you to include everyone, because Jesus taught us lots of stuff, didn't he? But one of the things that Jesus taught us is that people with additional needs and disabilities are important. Now, 2/3 of the things that the miracles that Jesus did that are recorded in the Gospels involve somebody with additional needs or a disability. So it mattered to him to get alongside those people, and it matters to us. And so, yeah, our mission, our calling is to enable that as much as we can, with as many churches as we can, with as many children's, youth and families workers as we can, so that as many of those 2.5 million that are out there in the UK as possible can get to hear about Jesus and get to respond to him and to the gospel message.
Oh, brilliant. So what would be your top sort of tips if someone rang up and said, I've just become a vicar, or I've just become a youth worker at church. There are a few guys with additional needs in and around our community, and so far our church hasn't really wrestled with the issues. What can I do to enable church to feel more inclusive for a few guys who need stuff?
Yeah, that's a really good thing. And of course, one of my top tips would be get some training, get some knowledge and information. So people can do that. They can reach out to the stuff we're doing. And for example, if people go to urbansaints.org/additional needs training, then they'll find all the stuff that we're doing at the moment there. But what I would also say is talk to the families that that have kids with additional needs already. So so often what we end up doing is thinking, right, we need to reach these children, let's put some stuff together, and we do that ourselves, and we do that without chatting to and getting to know and getting to learn from the families that we're trying to support. And they know their kids more than anybody. They know what support is working for their children at home, in school, maybe in other clubs that their child might go to, and we can learn from that. We don't have to invent the wheel. There's probably a really good one there already, and if we engage with families and say, hey, we want to really make this work for you and your child here, help us do that. Give us the stuff that you do already, and help us to adapt that and make it work in our church setting. Because the reality is that sadly, mostly the church is lagging behind other areas like education, for example. So if you go into most schools, they're really clued up. They've got systems in place. They've got strategies in place. We can learn from that. We can take from that and adapt that and plug it into what we're doing in our church setting, and really, really find the benefit of doing that. But the other big thing, probably, well, two other big things to add to that. One is just the culture in church that then needs to change, because so often there can be a not so positive culture in churches towards children and young people with additional needs. If little George starts to have a meltdown because he's being overwhelmed and overloaded with sensory input, sometimes the response is people staring and tutting and making comments and stuff, and so it's about leadership. It's about leading the church forward and saying, hey, we're making this work for the children and young people that we want to join us, but we also we want to make this work for us all, and as a church community we're in this together, and let's learn together and grow together. And then as a part of that, having somebody who owns this and has some responsibility for it within either the children's and youth work, typically that's where it starts, but that could extend to the whole church, an inclusion champion, somebody who looks out for the needs of children and young people with additional needs, who gets alongside the families that are coming along, that links them into the stuff that we're doing, that sees that they're struggling in different areas, and knows who to talk to maybe put some things in place to change that for them, and it keeps it high up on the radar. It means that there's a focus and a priority for it, which is really important. So yeah, I think get some training, get alongside families and learn from them. Look at how to adapt and modify and change the culture in our church, and then have somebody that owns this, that can take it forward alongside everybody else. Doesn't mean that it's all down to them, but just somebody that's going to keep the focus on it and keep it on our radar.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. That's given us some really practical things to think about. And I guess one of the other questions I think is worth asking or thinking about is also young people with additional needs will grow up and will become, will potentially stay as part of the church family as adults. And just for a second, sometimes we have this whole idea about our kids will go off to university or whatever. Sometimes I've had a real worry. This maybe is a bit of a tangent, but a real worry that sometimes you get guys who are in their 20s or 30s who are adults and just they've got additional needs. They're treated like they're part of the youth group still. And how do there's an interesting question though, I think, about how we include not just children and young people with additional needs, but how we enable them to be part of the main family of the church.
Yeah.
No longer young people. So that was a very clumsily worded question, but I think sometimes we sort of make people with additional needs feel like infants when actually they've grown up, and sometimes that's also because older people in church have known them since they were little, which even happens with me. I'm 44 and I go back to my old church and I still treat me like I'm 12. but it must be even harder for people with additional needs. So yeah, and it is a perennial challenge. Often young people, young adults, even older adults are treated like never-ending children, and that can be so difficult for the individual, to be treated in that way. But it also means that they're not able to flourish and grow in the way that they could. And so, whether it's a young person and how they advance up through the different age ranges of children's and youth work, or whether it's what happens when they get to their late teens, early 20s, and they're starting to move out age-wise anyway from the youth group setting. It's doing with them what we would look to do with any young person or young adult, which is to look for opportunities for them to be able to be still actively involved in the life of the church, maybe to be able to serve in the church in some way. So I recently had a conversation with some friends of mine who are in a church up in London. They've got a 23-year-old son who's autistic, and he's passionate about tech. And so what they did at their church was to recognize that and to get him involved in the AV system and the sound system in his teens. Got him to help out with a bit of that. He loved it. It gave him a purpose. It gave him a reason for being at church, and now he's passionate about that. And it's enabled him to go and serve in Christian festivals and places to be involved in tech there. And so it's looking for those opportunities, and even for a young person who that's not their thing, but it could be that there's that there's a prayer ministry that they can be a part of. It could be that they can be involved as part of that team that's supporting other families and other children and young people that are younger, and their experience of growing up in church and having additional needs themselves can be really valuable on that journey. So it's looking for those opportunities to help them to flourish and grow into the roles that maybe God's calling them into in the church. And we would want to do that for all our young people and young adults, and it shouldn't be any different for young people or young adults that have additional needs or disabilities of some kind. Brilliant. I was going to say, so that feel that I love that you said that, because so often I feel like people get done too, and actually
Yeah.
it's better to say actually we've all got needs and we've all got gifts, and actually that sort of idea that we can both that church is a place where both we come with our needs and we come with our gifts, and both need to.
And you know, respond to that calling that we've got, and you know that being done unto thing. There's a phrase that goes around a bit in the disability community, which is nothing about us without us.
Yeah.
And that's so powerful. Nothing about us without us. In other words, include us, involve us. Don't just do things unto us. As you were saying just now, do stuff with us. Get us involved. Help us to be a part of what's going on. And like I said, Jesus taught us that 2,000 years ago. Sometimes that can get forgotten, but it's good to remind us as church, the corporate church, of the importance of everybody within our church community. And God can use everybody and does use everybody in amazing ways to share the good news and to show Jesus to the world. So yeah, it's great to join in with that.
Brilliant. And I suppose it's just as a line to finish with, I guess that the Holy Spirit is not limited by the things we limit the Holy Spirit by. So God can speak and work through people with additional needs, through children, just as much as He can work through you and me. And yeah,
I was at Spring Harvest several years ago. There was a young lad there, an autistic lad, about 9 years old, non-verbal, it was a challenge in some ways for the team to be able to include him. They weren't sure how to do that. Gave them a few ideas to help, but often he'd be on his own with somebody there, but not really engaging with what was going on, and a real feeling of, wow, are we just child-minding him? Are we just sitting with him and releasing his family to go and do some other stuff, and are we actually impacting this lad's life in any way? Found the answer to that question through a phone call from the family a couple of days after Spring Harvest. They got in touch to say that on the way home, their non-verbal boy started singing. Yeah. He was singing 3 words from the main worship song they'd been using that particular time, which was Cornerstone.
Oh, yeah.
And this non-verbal boy with a beautiful look of absolute bliss, just a real connection with God on his face, was singing "Weak Made Strong."
Oh,
Weak
wow.
Made Strong. Wow. Yeah.
Well, that's
God had been at work. We might not have seen it. We might not have, been great at enabling it all the time, but the Holy Spirit was there and was working through this lad, and he was responding to that even on the way home in the car. So yeah, never underestimate what the Holy Spirit can do and how the Holy Spirit can work through everybody, absolutely everybody.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Mark. That's been brilliant. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.